Jon Jones, the former UFC light heavyweight champion, has been sidelined since early 2020, but still hopes to make his heavyweight debut on December 10th at UFC 282. MMA's Fighting's Ariel Helwani reported Monday on the MMA Hour. Do you think Jon Jones will fight in 2022? Because the clock is ticking. Let's get the details in this video. Make sure you stick with me to the end. Without any further delay, let's get into it. Jon Jones' return to the UFC already has a defined opponent and a date set. The first fight of former light heavyweight champion Jon Jones is in the heavyweight division would already be well underway, even with a date set. According to journalist Ariel Helwani, there is an agreement practically closed for the confrontation between Bones and Stipe Miocic to occur at UFC 282 on December 10th in Paradise, USA. The MMA Fighting reporter added that the Ultimate's goal is for the fight to be the main event on the edition's card. It is worth mentioning that the initial prediction was that the card's main event would be the rematch between Jiri Prochazka and Glover Teixeira for the light heavyweight belt. Ariel Helwani confirmed that the UFC has been talking to Jon Jones' team about the main event fight on December 10th, and that Jones wants to be in on the card. Jones is currently motivated and actively training, Helwani reported. Jones is the promotion's main opponent. In a fight for the title, he will face Francis Ngannou, a heavyweight champion. However, it seems unlikely that Ngannou will be available towards the end of the year due to his ongoing rehabilitation following knee surgery. In that case, an interim title shot between Jones and former champion Stipe Miocic is expected to be the promotion's backing plan. However, that also remains in the air regarding whether a deal will be made in time for December 10th. Helwani further reported that if that doesn't happen, the UFC will likely head to UFC 285 in March for an anticipated date for Jones' return. Many in the fighting world considered him one of the greatest MMA fighters. Jones has been away from the octagons for a long time. In his last match, played almost 3 years ago, the American defeated Dominic Reyes and retained the light heavyweight belt. After a few months, Bones, who had 26 wins and only one setback in his career, decided to migrate to heavyweights and abdicated the throne. The bout with Jones would also mean a return for Miocic, who also fought in March 2021 when he was relentlessly knocked out by Francis Ngannou and stripped of his belt. The 29-year-old professional MMA fighter record was 20 wins and 4 losses. Jones spent more than 2 years recovering to compete in the heavyweight division after relinquishing his light heavyweight belt in May 2020 following a controversial win over Dominic Reyes. While he is still widely considered to be one of the greatest fighters of all time, Bones has also been embroiled in many controversies outside the cage, including a domestic battery case in late 2021 stemming from an alleged incident in Las Vegas following his UFC Hall of Fame induction for his first fight with Alexander Gustafsson. UFC 282 already features a light heavyweight rematch between UFC champion Jiri Prochazka and former champion Glover Teixeira, which will likely serve as the card's main event if either Ngannou vs. Jones nor Miocic vs. Jones is finished first of December 10th. Next up, let's talk about the greatest matches of Jon Jones' career. It's been argued that Jon Bones Jones is one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the history of the UFC. Jones has had many dominant matches in the light heavyweight division. With such an incredible record, it may be difficult to find his greatest fights. But for this video, I have selected what I feel are the best fight of Jon Jones' career to date. His first great fight in our list is UFC 165, Jon Jones vs. Alexander Gustafsson fight. Fights in the UFC light heavyweight division are often grueling matches where stamina and the ability to take punishment in the form of punches and heavyweight blows determine the winner, and title fights are no exception. At UFC 165's, Bones Jones was set to defend his title against his challenger Alexander Gustafsson in a much anticipated match. This match lived up to every expectation as it went the distance, with neither fighter gaining the upper hand. The match was essentially scored dead even through 4 rounds, and the final round decided the winner. Jones's stamina was evident, and Gustafsson's body language showed he had little left in the tank. Jones's attempt to finish the fight before the final bell with a flurry of kicks and punches, but Alexander was also determined to stay on his feet and survive long enough to put the decision in the judge's hands. In the end, Jones successfully defended his title by a narrow 2-point margin as the judges awarded him the victory by a score of 49-47. His next best fight on our list is UFC 140, Jon Jones versus Lyoto Machida. Initially, Jones was set to defend his title against Phil Davis at UFC 140, but Davis struggled to recover from an injury, so Lyoto Machida stepped in to take his shot at the dominant Jon Bones Jones. Coming into the match, Machida had never lost a UFC match via technical submission, and many believed he would be the one to solve Jon Jones' fighting style and dethrone UFC's youngest ever champion. But did it go as they had believed? Keep watching to find out. The first round was dead even, with nothing separating the two fighters, but that quickly changed in the second round. Machida suffered a gash on his forehead that had to be checked by the cage side doctor before the fight could continue, and any chance he had of gaining an advantage was lost at that moment. Returning to action, Jones could take advantage, lock in a chokehold, and hold it until Lyoto Machida lost consciousness. Jones was criticized for how long he kept the hold applied, but even Machida acknowledged that such things happen in MMA fights. Next, let's talk about his rather personal fight, UFC 182, Jon Jones versus Daniel Cormier. At UFC 182, Jones was set to meet the Olympian Daniel Cormier in a match between the two competitors with only one loss on their respective records. Leading up to the match, Cormier dropped from the heavyweight division to become a light heavyweight to fight Jon Bones Jones. Jones had nothing but disparaging words for Cormier over the year leading up to the fight, so this match went beyond the fight for domination in the octagon. It had become personal. The obvious strategy for Jones would be to use his reach as an advantage and take away Cormier's Olympic-style wrestling attack, but Jones had something to prove, so he put his mind to winning the takedown battle. Jones walked away by beating Cormier at his own game, proving that despite the opponent, he should always be considered a favorite. Next up, UFC 128, Jon Jones versus Mauricio Shogun Rua. At the age of 23, Jon Bones Jones was set to take on UFC light heavyweight title holder Shogun Rua for a chance to become the youngest UFC champion of all time. Jones used his reach to his advantage and completely baffled the current champ, as nothing Rua did helped him gain an advantage or momentum. Jones took complete charge of the fight in the third round when he could land a heavy body blow to Rua's midsection, and the official was forced to stop the fight to prevent injury to the prone Mauricio Shogun Rua. The result was Jon Jones claiming his first UFC belt and becoming the youngest reigning champ in UFC history. Next, we have another Jon Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson fight, UFC 232. After a grueling 5-round match in their first fight, it took 5 years before Bones Jones and Alexander Gustafsson met in the octagon for a second time. There was nearly as much anticipation leading up for the rematch as before their first meeting, and fans were hoping for another legendary battle of attrition. Jon Jones proved why he was considered one of the best in the business in that very fight by dismantling Gustafsson throughout 3 rounds. After 2 rounds of dominating ground and pound, Jones was allowed to finish Gustafsson after Gustafsson sustained a growing injury. Bones Jones took advantage by pounding Gustafsson on the mat, and the officials had no choice but to stop the match. Wrapping it up, there's the Jon Jones versus Vitor Belfort fight, UFC 152. In this fight, Jon Jones was scheduled to defend his UFC light heavyweight title against fan favorite Vitor Belfort. Still, most experts expected Jones to easily walk out of the octagon with his championship reign intact. Belfort's chances for victory lay with him starting quickly and avoiding Jones's reach advantage, and he was able to do that by injuring Jones's arm early in the match. Bones Jones dealt with adversity well and fought through the pain to take the match into the 4th round, where he could force Victor to submit after locking him in a Kimura hold in the first minute of the round. The guy is really good. That concludes today's video. If you found the video helpful, please consider giving us a thumbs up and don't forget to share the video with your friends and family. See you next time.